By the way, kung gusto niyo manood ng lab lessons ko, naka-post naman yun sa playlist natin kasi apparently some of my students watch that also. Anyway, I appreciate that, no? Ayun. Just in case you want to watch my lab classes, Bio 1102, nasa Canvas, ay nasa YouTube lang sila. Okay? So with that being said, let's start our chapter 4, which is chemical reaction. Okay. So, chemical reactions, uh, I know you have an idea about this now since this has been discussed to you in your high school, but we have to re-emphasize this again, and I will give you some more complicated types of chemical reaction which is necessary for you to know, okay, because those concepts that I will lay out to you later are very important, very crucial in understanding all the other biological processes that happens in our body, okay, not only in our body but also in the environment, okay. So yun, so let's talk about chemical reactions again, okay? Just like what you did in high school, may basics to, and then since college tayo, we will have to level up this idea later, okay? So let's begin, huh? So our goal for this chapter is for you to be able to distinguish the types of chemical reaction and to know how to balance redox reaction, okay? This is good for today, and this one will be good for the next session. Okay, kasi redox is a very lengthy topic. Okay, so before we proceed with the chemical reaction, just to emphasize lang, yung balancing ng chemical reaction like, nasa lab yun, okay? So, I hope na na-discuss na sa inyo ng lab nyo because it's already Friday. Okay? So, yun. More for sure, pangalawang meeting nyo na sa kanya this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay? So, ayun. So, I hope na na-discuss na yung balancing because I'm not going to cover that here. Anyway, that is not important in this part naman. So, ayun. So, with that being said, let's start na. So, just to have a short review, our matter do undergo changes, di ba? And dalawang uri ng changes yung ina-undergo niya. Okay, so we have the physical change and we have the chemical change, no? So, when you say physical change, nagbabagong anyo lang siya. Physical appearance, okay? So, that means, for example, you put your water in the freezer, it becomes solid. Put your water into a flame, no? It turns into a gas, it turns into a steam. So basically, nagbabagong itsura nan siya. However, its chemical identity is still the same regardless of the state of matter. Okay? So physical change yan. Okay? So yan. Pero when you say chemical change, what happens here is that the chemical identity of your substance do undergo changes talaga, no? So for example, you have your carbon monoxide before, tapos magagawin mo yung carbon dioxide. That is a type of chemical reaction, okay? Because CO, this is very toxic. Carbon dioxide, not so toxic, pero this is very dangerous to the environment because CO2 levels are rising. Okay, pero yun, yung idea, this one is very toxic na, and this one is less toxic na, especially to humans. Okay, mamaya bigay ko yung context ba't ko sinabing toxic yan. Okay, so yan. So, as you can see, what just happened here is that yung oxygen, naging dalawa lang. Isa sa reactant, naging dalawa sa product. So, siguro isipin nyo, no? Siguro that's a minor change lang naman, no? Parang we don't need to worry about that. But, keep in mind, no? Na yung kanyang chemical formula, no? Ay ibang-iba doon sa kabila, no? So, ibig sabihin, its chemical property will be very different to the other. And gaya nga ng sabi ko, later on, I will emphasize on this again. This is very toxic, no? So, when you happen to inhale this, you will pass out immediately. Okay, agad-agad. That's why many uh, ay mga victims ng fire, okay, they usually pass out agad, no, kasi one of the products of combustion is this one. Okay, so ang carbon dioxide, no, although we will still pass out, no, if there's too much of it in the air, pero at least for CO2 it will take longer time. Okay, so as you can see, the mechanism of their action differs now because they are two different molecules. So that means may chemical change talaga. No? The chemical identity of our substance really changed. Okay, and usually chemical changes are often referred to as chemical reactions. And as we know, chemical reactions are accompanied by chemical equations. Okay? So, in high school, we have these types of chemical reaction: synthesis, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement or metathesis reaction. So, alam natin to ng high school, right? So, let's have a short review muna. Okay? So, pag sinabi synthesis, we have multiple reactant combining to form one product. Okay? So, that's synthesis. Okay? So, you just have to do pattern recognition. Tignan mo lang yung reactant, tignan mo yung product. Pag maraming reactant, isang product, that's synthesis. Okay? So, for example, you have a magnesium metal. When you expose it in the air, it turns into magnesium oxide. Okay? And this happens spontaneously, no? Kung wala kasi tayo sa lab, no? So, sayang, wala tayong pan-demonstrate, no? However, for example, you have this magnesium metal, ilabas mo siya sa oil niya, labas mo siya sa atmosphere, biglang mamumuti yun. Okay? So, it eventually turns into magnesium oxide. Okay? So, that is chemical change. Okay? Kasi nagbago na yung kanyang identity. This is metal, this is ionic. Okay? So, nagbago yung kanyang identity. Okay. Next type of the high school chemical reaction is the decomposition. Ano meron dito? You have one reactant but multiple products. Okay? So this is in contrast with the other one, multiple reactant, one product. Okay? Synthesis yan. For decomposition, multiple products, single reactant. Okay? Single reactant, multiple products. When do decomposition reactions occur? So, decomposition reactions occur when you heat the substance or you apply electricity to it. Okay? So, for example, siguro try nyo to sa bahay. Get a glass of water and then add some salt to it. Okay? And then, kuha kayo ng battery. May wires doon. Ilubog nyo yung wires sa solution. Mapapansin nyo that may gases na na-form sa end ng wires. Okay? Yan. Ginagawa talaga yan sa electrochemistry tawag doon. Nasa anachem natin yun. So, next time, yun yung experiment natin. Okay? Anyway, so, ito yung idea for electrolysis, okay, or applying electricity. Kuha ka ng glass of water sa bahay, lagyan mo konti asin for it to be conductive. Kuha kang battery, yung D-size, yung malaki. Then, attach two wires to it. Lubog mo yung wire doon sa tubig. Nakikita mo may bubbles doon na nagpo-form. Okay. Those bubbles are hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay. Because what happens when you apply electricity to your water is that they decompose into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. Okay, so yun. We will discover more of this type of electrochemical reaction sa analytical chemistry. Okay, so I hope students ko pa rin kayo nun. So yun. So analytical chem yan. So ito naman for potassium chlorate, no. When you heat your oxygen ions, they commonly produce oxygen gas. Okay? So again, usually our oxygen ions produce oxygen gas when heated. Okay? So ayan, no? So potassium chlorate, just heat it, no? Lagay mo lang siya sa apoy. It will convert into potassium chloride and oxygen gas. So again, the idea is that oxygen ions commonly produce oxygen gas when heated. Okay? Next type. No. So next type of reaction, we have the single displacement. Okay. So for the single displacement, what happens here is that it just swaps partner. Okay. So sino yung nag-swap ng partner? It is the anion. Okay. So look at this. No. You have silver nitrate and zinc. No. So this nitrate, its original partner was silver. Okay. But at the end of the reaction, ang partner na niya si zinc. Okay, so basically, it's swap partners. Okay, Bakit kaya naging ganun, sir? Di-discuss natin yan sa redox reactions. Okay? Pero the idea is, ayan. So originally, its partner is silver, but after the reaction, it is now zinc. Okay? Bakit naging ganun? Nasa redox yan. Next week yan. Okay? So all we have to do right now is to just check for patterns. Okay? So for magnesium and hydrochloric acid, originally the partner of chloride ion is hydronium ion. But after the reaction, we have magnesium. Okay? So yan, redox din yan. Okay? So that's the single displacement. Your anion swaps out its cation partner. Okay? So nakipagpalit siya ng partner. But in double displacement, ito na yung nagkakapalit-palit lahat. Okay? So originally, the partner of sodium is sulfide. The original partner of hydrogen, hydronium, is chloride. At the end of the reaction, they swapped out. Okay? Nag-swap sila. So similar with this one, barium swap out its partner to sulfate. Sodium swap out its partner with chloride. Okay? So yan. So that's double displacement. Okay? So again, this is very high school. Okay? Napaka-high school ng lesson natin right now. However, sabi mo nga, kung high school tayo, tapos na tayo sana ngayon. Pero hindi. We are college students, so we have to discuss more types of chemical reaction. If you are from STEM background, maybe na-discuss na to sa inyo. But for those who are not in the STEM background, sa mga ABM, gas, fumes, TVL, okay. So yan. So we will discuss this na. Okay. So ano meron dito? So yung sinabi ko kanina, that's high school. Okay. Although it is important, but we don't want that to be emphasized too much. Okay. Kasi college na tayo. We have to level up our understanding of chemical reactions. Okay. So the more specific types of chemical reactions are listed here. So first we have the combustion reaction, and then all the other three are reactions in aqueous solution. Okay, so for this session, I will cover this part, and for this one, that will be covered next meeting to. Okay, so but these three, kaya natin yan i-cover today. Okay, so with that being said, let's start with the combustion reaction. Okay. So again, this is not your typical high school reaction. So yeah, let's talk about this. Start with the combustion reaction. I know you are familiar with this one. What happens here is that you have your fuel. Okay, this is your fuel reacting with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide and water. When we say oxygen in the air, that's always written as O2. Kaya pag sinabing air, O2 din yan. Okay? Because this is the molecule that allows combustion to happen. Okay? Kasi tignan nyo, I think one of the experiments ninyo sa gas loss, yun ba? Maglalagay kayo ng kandila sa loob ng bottle or apoy sa loob ng bottle, and then tatakpan nyo ng egg. Okay? So ano yung purpose ng egg? Sabihin ko na nga. So ang purpose ng egg is that it prevents oxygen from coming into the bottle so that the combustion will stop. However, in terms of gas loss, since the oxygen molecules inside the bottle decreases, that means the pressure inside also decreases. So if there is very low pressure inside the bottle, it will actually suck the egg from the mouth of the bottle. Okay. So anyways, sinabi ko na yung context ng experiment na yun. Okay? But in terms of chemical reaction, pag tinakpan mo yung bote na may nasusunog na papel and ng itlog, yun, hihinto yung apoy because there is no oxygen anymore. Okay, so this is the reason why also our firefighters always tell us that in case of fire, you have to wet your blanket, kuha kayo ng kumot, basahin nyo, tapos ipatong nyo doon sa apoy. Pag pinatong nyo kasi yun sa apoy, it creates a barrier in which the oxygen cannot penetrate through the burning material. So since wala ng oxygen, it will stop. Okay? So yun. Same thing with fire extinguisher. Okay, so sa fire extinguisher naman, it contains compressed gas. Yes, may triangle yun. Okay. Kailangan kompleto to. Pero without oxygen, ayun, walang mangyayari. So you have your fuel, you have your oxygen or air, and then you have your heat. Okay? So ito yung triangle ng apoy, di ba? So very vital in terms of chemical reaction yung oxygen. Kaya ina-emphasize ko siya. Okay? Kasi combustion reaction tayo. Okay. So yun. So in terms of oxygen, ayun. So for ano tawag dito? For fire extinguisher, ayun. So it blows compressed gas, no, that doesn't have any oxygens in it. Mostly carbon dioxide yun. Okay. So pag blinow niya yun dun sa apoy, it actually removes all these oxygens that are needed in the chemical reaction. So dapat marunong na kayo mag fire extinguisher. Okay. So pag in-squeeze mo yung handle nun, it will blow compressed gas na walang oxygen, and since wala ng oxygen, that prevents the reaction to happen na. Okay, so hihinto yung apoy. Okay, because ayun nga sabi ni Ryan, no, we have this triangle, no, we have the fuel, heat, oxygen triangle, or fuel, heat, air. Mawala yung isa dito, yun, hihinto yung apoy. Okay, in the context of the chemical reaction, we are pertaining particularly to oxygen. Okay. So yun, for the fuel, in chemical reactions, our fuel are primarily made of this formula, CHO. Okay, XYZs are subscript. So pwedeng C3H8, pwedeng C6H12O6 na glucose. Okay. So actually yung kahoy nyo gawa yan sa glucose, pero hindi nyo pwede kainin. Kaya kinakain niya ng anay kasi they can digest the glucose here. Okay? Pero tayo, we cannot digest it. Okay? So you will learn more on that in biochem. But anyway, so everything is fuel, no? The papel, itong kahoy na desk ko, okay? Yung kahoy na cabinet ko, yan. So, sila lahat ay fuel. Okay? So, that's why they can burn. Okay? Pwede sila masunog. Okay? In the presence of oxygen, and of course, you have to have heat. Okay? So, kasi kung walang mainit, hindi magkakaroon ng enough energy to overcome the activation energy. Okay? So, anyway, so yun lang yung concept ng triangle na yun. They are all interrelated so that combustion reaction will occur. Okay? So, yan. Let's go to kitchen. Sa kitchen nyo, ano napapansin nyo, di ba? Pag nagko-combustion reaction kayo, ang napapansin nyo ay ganito, nangingitim yung ilalim ng kalan nyo, di ba? Kitchen, cookware, suit. Okay. May dark theme na sa ano. Sige nga. Ay, wow. May ganun. Okay, so anyway. So, di ba pag nagluluto kayo sa bahay, there are chances, no, nang nangingitim yung ilalim ng kalan nyo. Okay. Ayun, no. Ayun, itim na to. Lutuan pa ba yan? Ito na lang, magandang example. So, papansin nyo, the bottom part of this cookware, no, appears to be black, no? Nangingitim siya habang inaapoyan siya. Saan kaya galing yung black na yan? Okay? So, yung black na yon ay galing sa incomplete combustion. Okay? Kasi, when we combust our fuels, no, if they are complete, ibig sabihin, kompleto yung mga requirements mo, marami kang oxygen, mataas yung heat mo. Okay? So, if ganun yung case mo, you will completely convert your molecules into carbon dioxide. Okay? Yun yung nangyayari sa body natin, but on a different metabolic process. No? Lahat ng kinakain nyo, nagiging carbon dioxide na ini-exhale nyo. Okay? Pero, outside the body, hindi ganun yung nangyayari, di ba? Incomplete yung reaction sometimes. Okay? Paano nagiging incomplete yung reaction kapag kulang siya ng oxygen? Okay? So, in the context of your cookwares, okay, sa lutuan nyo, ito yung lutuan natin, paano natin nasabi na onti yung oxygen? Okay. So, syempre, before you place this, etong, yan, yan, lutuan na yan. Bago mo yan ilagay dyan, maraming pwede pasukan yung oxygen. It can enter the sides dito, pwede pumasok yung oxygen gas dito, pwede rin sa ibabaw. Okay, so maraming oxygen na pwede pumasok sa apoy. Ibig sabihin, it can help combust the material. Okay, Pero, pag nilagyan mo yan ng, let's say, kawali, kaya ito, nakalimutan ko tawag dyan. Ayan. So, pag nilagyan mo yan ng ganyan, ano mangyayari? It will block the access of oxygen dito sa taas. So, basically, yung oxygen, it can just enter sa sides. So, ano mangyayari? Incomplete combustion. So, incomplete combustion, ibig sabihin, usually, kulang ng oxygen. Okay. So, ano ba sabi ng PowerPoint natin? So, if you have incomplete combustion, okay, sorry. If you have incomplete combustion, you will produce soot or carbon monoxide. Okay? Ano yung soot? Yun yung itim. Okay? Yun yung itim-itim sa ilalim ng lutuan natin. Okay? Ibig sabihin, maski sa lutuan natin, may chemistry. Okay? So, yan. So, mahirap tanggalin yung soot. Even ako nag-struggle dyan bilang dakilang dishwasher sa bahay. Anyway, so yan na. Yung itim-itim na yan, that is the soot. Okay? That is actually a byproduct of incomplete combustion. Okay? Again, bakit naging incomplete yung combustion? Probably kasi kulang sa oxygen. Okay? So, ayun. Try nyo yan sa kandila, 'di ba? Okay. So sa kandila, maglagay ka ng baso sa sa tapat ng apoy. Since yung kandila ay yung baso mo, it will cover the top portion of the air, no? Ayun. So magiging unti yung oxygen na pumapasok sa apoy ng kandila. Ayun. Kaya nagkakaroon ng soot. Okay? So kung marami ka namang oxygen pero may soot pa rin, ang probable reason doon is that unti yung apoy, okay? Mababa yung temperature. Kaya nga may triangle tayo. Untian mo yung oxygen, you will form soot, okay? Untian mo yung temperature ng heat, magkakaroon ka rin ng soot, okay? So how will you remove the chances of forming soot, okay? So pag nagluluto ka, make sure na medyo mataas yung level, yung distance ng lutuan nyo sa apoy mismo, okay? Because yung ibang lutuan kasi ang baba ng distance nila, no? So ibig sabihin nun, less oxygen. So medyo taasan nyo, okay? And then another thing is itodo nyo yung apoy, okay? Unless iinin na lang kayo ng kanin, kailangan nyo talaga hinaan yun. But anyway, so yun, kapag tinodo nyo kasi apoy, mas mataas yung temperature, therefore it can process complete reactions, okay? So yun, kapag mahina kasi yung apoy, mababa temperature, ayun, more chances for soot formation, okay? Papansin ko yan sa bahay pag ako nagluluto ng pancit canton. Pag tinodo ko yung apoy, wala akong makikitang itim-itim sa gilid. Pero pag hininaan ko yan, nagkakaroon na ng itim. So, yan. So, yun yung chemistry in action natin. Okay? So, yan. So, again, another byproduct is the carbon monoxide. For example, nasa condo ka right now and may nasunog na bagay. Okay? What will happen? Yung oxygen sa condo mo, mostly of the condos are enclosed, di ba? Usually, walang bintana mga yan, no? Walang balcony. So, bale, ang nangyayari is that onti lang yung oxygen sa loob, okay? So, the combustion will not be fully complete. So, that's why it will also produce carbon monoxide. Ito yung dahilan bakit merong carbon monoxide meter sa bahay, sa condo niya, okay? Yung detector. Nagbibip yun kapag meron kapag may carbon monoxide siyang na-detect. Okay? So, bakit? No? Bakit carbon monoxide detector? But hindi carbon dioxide detector? Okay. The reason is this. No? Carbon monoxide, as I said earlier, they are known to be very dangerous. No? So that when you inhale it, no, kung makasinghot ka lang ng onting amount niya, you may pass out agad-agad. Why? Okay. So let's talk about the biochemical importance of this. So, this is the Lewis structure of your carbon monoxide. Marunong na kayo mag-Lewis structure, diba? And this is your oxygen gas. Ano napapansin nyo? Medyo similar, right? Okay? There is an uncanny resemblance of carbon monoxide to oxygen. But ano yung possible implication nito? Ano yung humahalo sa dugo natin? Oxygen. So, ibig sabihin, if we have carbon monoxide in the air, it may compete with the oxygen in the air. And actually, better pa nga yung binding ng carbon monoxide than the oxygen sa hemoglobin. Okay? So, merong graph niyan. Ano po, may graph yan eh. Ayan. So basically, what happens here is that dito pinapakita sa graph na to yung binding ng oxygen sa and binding ng carbon monoxide sa hemoglobin natin. Okay. So anyway, sa biochem nyo pa maintindihan yung tong plot na to. But ayan yun yung idea. Okay. So, and in the end, Bohr effect, carbon dioxide yan. Okay. So anyway, so magkaka-idea ka na dito sa biochem. So, set aside ko muna. So, yun yung idea, no? That our carbon monoxide, they can bind more to the hemoglobin than the oxygen. So, ibig sabihin, once na marami ng carbon monoxide sa kwarto nyo, sa condo, ayun, pwede manghina ka na because your body isn't being supplied with oxygen eh. And then, take note, mas malakas yung kapit niya kaysa sa oxygen. So, ayun, ang mangyayari, hindi mo maamoy yung carbon monoxide. So, slowly, manghihina ka and then later on, you will pass out. Okay? Pag nag-pass out ka, there are many chances na mangyari. Pwede ma-consume ka by fire or pwede ma-hypoxia ka. Hypoxia is a case wherein your cells die because they lack oxygen. And take note that oxygen is needed in many biological processes, especially metabolic ones, no? Such as electron transport chain. Doon ginagamit yung oxygen to produce water. So yun, kapag kulang ka ng oxygen, hihinto yung electron transport chain. And what we know about electron transport chain, it produces most of the energy of the cell. 36 ATP per process yun eh. Ang glycolysis, 2. Ang Krebs cycle, alam ko, 2 lang ata or 4. Pero electron transport chain, 32 to 34. Okay. So, most of the energy of the cell will cease to exist kasi wala ng oxygen. Okay. So, that's why people die of hypoxia. No? Pero kung ikaw ay ma-recover man, okay, depending on the length of time you are exposed to carbon monoxide, it could also have detrimental effect, especially sa brain. Pag yung brain natin nakulangan ng oxygen, pwede kang maging lantang gulay. Okay? So, yan yung dangerous stuff na. I think may allowable limit na walang oxygen yung body. Pero beyond that, it could have severe damages, especially to your brain. Okay? So, yun. That's the reason why we have carbon monoxide detectors. Bakit hindi carbon dioxide? Because we also exhale it. No? And yung carbon monoxide, manggagaling lang naman yan kapag may nasusunog, no? Incomplete combustion. So that's why we have the carbon monoxide detectors. Hindi yan mag-exist without something na nasusunog. Okay? And also, you cannot smell it. So, ang mangyayari, gugulat ka na lang, nangihina ka na. Ayan. So, you need to go out of the room ASAP. Okay? Kunin mo na yung mga important na gamit. Okay? And labas na. Okay? Gamit ka ng kumot na basa, taklob mo sa bunga mo para hindi pumasok yung usok. Okay, so anyway, ito, last side kwento ko na. 'Di ba pag sumasakay tayo ng jeepney, ano na papansin nyo? Especially the older jeepneys, yung usok nila, it's dark, 'di ba? Okay, because that dark particles sa tambucho is actually the soot. Okay? So, yun yung physical evidence that incomplete combustion yung nangyayari sa jeepney. Okay? So, papansin nyo yun kapag ang jeepney ay luma. Okay? Especially mga 1990 something pa na. Okay? So, anyway. So, kapag luma na yung jeepney, the combustion in the engine isn't efficient na. Okay? So, karag-karag na siya. So, as a result, incomplete yung combustion ng fuel, ayun, umiitim yung usok kasi it is soot that is formed, okay? Maitim yan. And one of the dangerous byproduct of this one is the carbon monoxide. Ako medyo nafe-feel ko yan eh. Since alam ko naman yung incomplete combustion. Pag nakasakay ako ng jeepney, then bandang tambutso ako, tapos kunwari traffic, na hindi nyo na na-experience traffic ngayon kasi lockdown. Nung face-to-face na from Valenzuela to Manila. Yan. So, nasa dulo ako ng jeepney, tas traffic. Eh di syempre, hindi gumagalaw yung ano, yung usok, 'di ba? O, parang sinusukloban ka ng ano, kadiliman ng ano, carbon monoxide. Nafe-feel ko, yung pag humihinga ako, parang nanghihina ako. So, ginagawa ko kapag ganun yung case, lipat ako banda sa driver. Naurong ako doon. Kasi at least doon, medyo malayo sa tambucho. So, onti yung carbon monoxide. Okay. So, yun. Ano yung ginagawa ng ating mga car industry to prevent that from happening, yung carbon monoxide? Because there are many people who died from it, no? Especially during the World War II. Okay? So, maraming people ang namatay sa carbon monoxide poisoning. Alam niyo yung Holocaust. Ayun. Maraming napatay din dahil doon. Okay? Because this is a sensitive topic, pero segwayan ko lang. Okay? So, ayun. I read one of the diaries, no, kay Anne Frank ba yun? I forgot now. Diaries and documentaries of the Nazi the Nazi history of Germany, no. So, grabe pala daw talaga yung ano, ginagawa nila sa Jews, no. Other than the gas chamber, no, sa sa mga concentration camp, especially in Auschwitz-Birkenau. Okay. May times daw na sasakyan na yung ginagamit nila mismo. Okay. So, by the way, sensitive to So, pero I just like to emphasize on the chemistry concept. Okay. So, yun. So, sometimes daw, ang ginagawa, meron daw mga special agents yung Nazis, no? I think that's the SS, no? So, magdadala sila ng sasakyan, tapos, hihikayatin nila yung mga gusto nilang patayin, no? Sasakay nila dun sa loob. Tapos mamaya, yung sasakyan, itotodo nila yung combustion niya. Then, syempre, inefficient yung sasakyan that time. Lalabas yun ng usok. And that usok is composed of carbon monoxide. So, yan. Very sad, no? Okay. And, ang gusto ko lang din i-emphasize dito is that we have to learn from history. Okay. And even car manufacturers learned from that. Okay. That's why yung ating mga sasakyan, they are equipped with catalytic converter. Okay. Right click. So, catalytic converter. So, ano yung catalytic converter? Because, ayun, over time, your car becomes inefficient in combusting. So, bali, maglalabas talaga yun ng CO, mostly. Okay? So, our catalytic converter, ito yung box sa tambucho. Okay? So, tingin kayo sa ilalim sa sasakyan. Pag may nakita kayong ganun, most likely, yun yung catalytic converter. Okay? So, anyway, so, mangyayari is, papasok ito doon, and then, paglabas niya, magiging CO2 na lang siya, which is less dangerous, okay? In terms of human biology context, okay? Kasi carbon monoxide, it competes with oxygen, but carbon dioxide, hindi masyado, okay? Because you can expel it through the Bohr effect. So, yan. So, the catalytic converter converts CO to CO2. At least, CO2 is mas hindi siya ganun ka-dangerous. So, you can escape ASAP pag nasa car ka na trap, okay? Mas conscious ka kaysa sa CO, okay? So, yun yung natutunan ng car industry from the experience, okay? But for us as people, no, we have to learn that some ideologies are not very acceptable, okay? Regardless of the point of view. So, you have to learn from your history. So, you know kung bakit ko sinasabi to, because just recently, we just commemorated one of the darkest times in the Philippine history. Okay? So, I hope as kabataan, we are more educated now. We have to learn from the past. Okay? And do your civil duty na lang. Okay? Kasi malapit na deadline ng botohan. Ay, ng registration. So, yun. So, idilat lang ang mata because you have to learn from the past. Okay? So anyway, so tapos na ako sa combustion. Ang gusto ko lang talaga ihalo to sa topic kasi malapit na yung deadline, guys. Ayan. So anyway, let's proceed with the next one. So, let's talk about reactions in aqueous solution. Okay. So we're done with the combustion. Again, full combustion produces carbon dioxide. Pero kapag incomplete yung combustion, meaning kulang ka ng oxygen or mababa yung apoy, it produces carbon monoxide and soot. Okay, yun yung soot, yun yung itim-itim sa tambucho, itim-itim sa ilalim ng lutuan nyo, kaya pag sa kandila, yun yung itim sa baso. Ayun. Yun yung soot. Okay? And yung carbon monoxide, again, just to emphasize, that's very dangerous. That's why if you live in a condo, family nyo nasa condo right now, please make sure that the carbon monoxide detector is working, because it will help you escape, no, the possible dangers of death, no. Possible chances of death. Okay, so yun, kasi yung carbon monoxide, it is just produced when something is burning. Hindi nyo maaamoy yun, pero the detector can detect it. Okay, so yun. By the way, in analytical chemistry, ituturo ko rin, as kung kayo students ko, tuturo ko rin yung mechanism of detection of CO sa ANAChem. But anyway, yun lang. Let's proceed with the next type of chemical reaction. Ito medyo mas mahirap to kaysa sa kanina. So, let's talk about the reactions in aqueous solution. Okay, so these are primarily reactions that happen in liquid media. Okay, so for example, yung asin nilagay mo sa tubig, aqueous tawag doon. Okay, so again, pag sinabing aqueous, you have your molecules or you have your ions dissolved in water. And that is different with the liquid. Okay, pag sinabing liquid, we are just pertaining to one specific molecule of solvent, okay? Especially water. Pero pag sinabing aqueous, that means yung iyong substance, hinalo mo sa tubig, okay? Kunwari, aqueous Milo, ayan. Aqueous gatas, ayan. Kasi yung mga molecules nila nakahalo sa tubig, okay? Pero when you say water, we don't say aqueous water, liquid water. Kasi water na yung pan-dissolve eh. You cannot dissolve water with water, di ba? Because it is water. So, yan. So, instead of saying aqueous water, we just say liquid water. And for the others, you dissolve in water, you call it aqueous. Okay? So, what happens when you put your substance in the water? They dissolve, okay? So, in the case of our ions, let's say asin, patak ka ng asin din sa tubig, nawawala siya. Eh, bakit siya nawawala? Because apparently, the ions of your crystal, no, yung salt mo, they dissolve in water. Okay? Humahalo siya sa tubig. Ito yung mechanism nun. So, if your crystal here, cation and ion, they become entrapped by the water molecules. Ayun. Anyway, naglalaro yung aking pusa. Ayan. So, ayun. So, yan, nagde-dissociate siya. Okay? So, teka lang guys, nagwawala yung pusa. Yan. Okay. Anyway, nilagyan ko kasi ng ballpen yung talent. Pusa reveal it. Yan. Ayaw niya. Okay. So si Ogie. Ogie, anak ng one of the oldest cats sa family. Okay. Dito siya. Hi, Ogie. Ogie. Ginising niya ako kaninang umaga. Okay. Anyway, so yun yung dissociation process, no? So, bale, when you put your ionic compounds, no, in water, they turn into ions, okay? So for example, you have your NaCl, ito yun. They turn into ions because they become solvated, no? Napapaligiran siya ng tubig, okay? So, yan. So, this is important because depending on the ions that you have, there might be chemical reactions that could happen. Okay? So again, hindi lahat ng liquid solutions, no? Hindi lahat ng aqueous solution, pag pinaghalo mo, may reaction. For example, pag aluin mo yung tuka, tuka tuloy, toyo pati suka pinagsama, tuka. Suka pati toyo. Ayan, pag aluin mo yung suka yung toyo, may nangyayari ba? Wala, 'di ba? Wala kang nakikita sumasabog, wala kang nakikita namumuo, 'di ba? They just mix homogeneously. However, in chemistry, if you mix specific molecules, if you mix specific ions, there are reactions that are happening. Okay? Merong mga reaction na nangyayari. Okay? So, yun yung sinabi ko dito. No? When you mix different aqueous solutions, not all of them produces not all of them produces a chemical reaction. Okay? And then, ito yung tanong. Kailan ko, sir, malalaman if a reaction can take place? Okay? So, these are the criteria for you to know if may reaction na mangyayari. So, ma-meet niya lang yung isa sa mga to, may kita niyo yung reaction na nangyayari. Okay? So, let's have letter A. So, ano sabi? Reaction will occur when you have ions that can form insoluble products. We call this process the precipitation reaction. So, ibig sabihin nun, pag may ions ka doon na pinaghalo mo, tapos biglang may namuo doon, precipitation reaction tawag doon. Okay, yung namuo na yun, that is the insoluble product we are pertaining to. Okay, I will show you a picture later. Next one, we have the ions that can neutralize each other, forming neutral substances. We call that the acid-base reaction. And then last one, we have your ionic species that can transfer electron, that is called a redox reaction. Okay? So, yun yung mga types of chemical reaction natin. Okay? So, mamit lang dyan yung isa, makikita mo yung change. Okay? So, yun. So, let's begin with precipitation reaction. Okay? So for precipitation reactions, basically what happens here is that you have ions that can combine to form insoluble product. Okay, so let's take a look at these two pictures here. We have magnesium sulfate and sodium hydroxide. And then makita mo they are clear. Yung white sa ilalim, that is just a reflection of light. Okay? Ilaw lang yan. Pero yung dalawang solution na yan, clear yan. But look at what happened when you mix them. Naging cloudy. Okay. Yung cloudy na yun ay dahil sa mga maliliit na particles na, minute particles na solid. Okay? Yun yung insoluble products, yung mga maliliit na yun. Okay? So, yun yung dahilan bakit siya naging cloudy. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, these two have ions that can combine to form the precipitate, no? Yung kulay white na cloud na yan. Okay? And then later over time, yung cloud na yan, it will settle at the bottom and yun, you can collect it. I actually have a video on that. No, nasa laboratory nga lang kasi andun yung mga videos. Just watch it, no? That was me last year in FEU. Ayan. Para makita nyo yung chemical reaction. Okay? So I showed there the precipitation reaction. Bali, paghaluin mo yung dalawang substance, yun, mamumuo siya. Okay? So, yun. Ito yung tanong. Paano mo malalaman kung precipitate yan or not? Okay? So, in order for you to know if it is a precipitate or not, you have to use the solubility rules. Okay? So, the solubility rules is a table wherein makikita mo kung ano yung mga precipitates na pwede mabuo. Okay? So, the solubility rules are separated into two portions. You have the usually soluble ions and the usually insoluble ions. Okay? However, for each ion, there are some exceptions. Okay? May except sila. Ibig sabihin, kunwari, nakita mo, usually soluble. Pag sinabi except, ibig sabihin, ito ay mga precipitate. Ito, nakita mo, they are usually insoluble except when paired with them, they are not precipitate. Okay? So, basahin natin very quickly and then let's apply it sa problems later. Okay? So, sige. Let's begin. Sabi, ito yung ions mo, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, ammonium. Okay? Sabi niya, all group 1 metal and ammonium salts are soluble. Okay? Ibig sabihin, kahit anong partner nila, soluble sila. Okay? Matutunaw sila sa tubig. Hindi sila mamumuo. Okay? Yun lang meaning ko dun. Ayun na si Ogie, namamahinga na siya. Okay? So, ayun. Yun yung ating rule dito. Okay? So, itong mga ions na to, they do not form precipitate. So, that means, matutunaw sila parate. No? You will not see them as solid chunks. And then you have your nitrates. Ano sabi? All nitrates are soluble. Ibig sabihin, regardless of its cation pair, soluble siya. Okay? Iron man yan, lead man yan, uranium man yan, it will be soluble. Okay? Next one. Chlorides, bromides, iodides. Let's read. All common chlorides, bromides, and iodides are soluble. Sabi, all common chlorides, bromides, iodides are soluble except, okay, sabi except Ag, Hg2, Pb. Okay? So sabi dito, kapag ang partner ni ClBrI ay silver, mercury, and lead to, ayun, insoluble na sila. Tatawa ko sa chat niya. Okay. So, yan. So, kapag ka-partner niya, Ag, Hg, and Pb, insoluble agad yan. So, makikita mo yan as kulay puti. Okay? So, yan. Then, we have the sulfates na. So, for the sulfate, ano meron? Sabi niya, they are mostly soluble except when they are paired with calcium, strontium, barium, lead. Okay? So, pag nakita mo yung sulfate, kapartner niya si calcium, strontium, barium, and lead, ibig sabihin, they are insoluble. Okay? So, yan. And then, acetates, they are always soluble. Kailangan nyo ba ito kabisaduhin? Hindi naman. Okay? Pero I highly suggest you to have a copy of this. So, paki-print out na lang yung slide na to. Okay? Or paki-take na lang yung picture. Okay? So, let's talk about usually insoluble. You have your phosphate. Sabi dito, all phosphates are insoluble unless you pair them with ammonium and group 1. Yung lithium, sodium, potassium, strontium, hindi pala. Lithium, potassium, sodium, rubidium, cesium. Okay? So, yan. So, they will be soluble if you pair it with them, the group 1 and the ammonium, but otherwise, they will be insoluble. For carbonate, you have the same rule as the phosphate. For hydroxides, all hydroxides are insoluble except those of ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, and calcium. Okay? So, yan. Sila daw ay insoluble unless you pair them with ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. And then you have your sulfides, same rule. Sulfides are insoluble except of those who are paired with ammonium, group 1, and group 2. Okay? So basically, andito mo malalaman kung sino yung partners na insoluble and soluble. Okay? And the goal of the precipitation reaction is to actually look into the ions that can form precipitate. Okay? So in the context of the previous picture, we have our magnesium sulfate and sodium hydroxide producing these products. Ano muna gagawin mo? So the first step always in precipitation reaction is to convert your ionic compounds into ions. Okay? So, ito yung unang mong gagawin, yung MgSO4, NaOH, you have to convert them into ions. And, again, keep in mind that you should know kung ano yung ions na meron ka, ano yung charge niya. Kailangan kabisado nyo na yun kasi last chapter pa yun. Okay? So, yan. Kailangan alam mo yung ions mo dito, MgSO4, obviously that's Mg2+, SO4 negative 2. Ano ions mabubuo mo dito? Na+, OH-. So you just have to recall your previous lessons. Okay? Then once you have your ions, you switch pairs. Okay? So, sino yung original partner ni magnesium? Si sulfate. Okay? Actually, the precipitation reactions are double displacement. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, instead of magnesium pairing again with sulfate, it will now pair with OH. Okay? Pag-swap mo sila ng partner. Okay? So, sila na yung magiging partner ngayon, and obviously, ito na yung magiging partner. No? Okay? So, ganun. So, after you convert them into ions, you swap their partners, and then, determine the formula of those partners. No? So, you have your Mg2+, OH-, sila na ngayon magka-partner kasi nagpalit sila. Okay, so ito na yung ngayon magka-partner. Okay? So ngayon, tingin tayo dito sa table. Bago pala tayo tumingin sa table, alamin na natin yung crisscross niya. Okay, let's determine the crisscross formula. That will be MgOH2. This will be Na2SO4. So ito na yung products mo. Okay? So, double displacement lang yan. Gawin mong ions, then pagpalitin mo ng partner, then you crisscross again. Okay? So, now, you have your products with you. Now, let's check kung ano yung mga precipitate dito, kung meron ba. Okay? So, tingin tayo between these two compounds. Let's read this table and let's interpret na kung ano meron dyan. Let's begin with sodium sulfate. Ang sabi dito, sodium sulfate, ano yung rule ng solubility rules? So, for sodium, sabi, sodium is always soluble. Always soluble siya. So, ibig sabihin, this compound here is soluble. So, tunaw yan sa water. Okay, so that means this is soluble. Let me just write it here. Yan, so soluble siya. Then for the MgOH2, tingin tayo dito sa table, may sinabi ba? Obvious naman, may binilugan ako doon. So MgOH2, basahin natin kung ano sinabi about them. Hydroxides, okay? So sabi sa hydroxide, hydroxides are insoluble except of those ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. Okay? So if ang partner nila ay ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium, soluble sila. Pero kapag iba yung kapartner nila, insoluble sila. So yun yung Tagalog form ng sentence na to, ha? Soluble sila kapag kahalo niya yung ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. Pero kapag iba ka-partner nila, insoluble siya. Okay? Insoluble siya. Sino ba ka-partner ni magnesium? Group 1 ba yan? Hindi. Ammonium ba yan? Hindi. Strontium ba yan? Barium ba yan? Calcium ba yan? Hindi. Kasi magnesium yan. So, since hindi siya pasok dun sa except, no? Yung except, tas yung mga sumunod na words na. So, since hindi siya pasok dun, ibig sabihin, this one is a precipitate. Okay? Insoluble yan. Okay? Insoluble. Kasi sinabi dito, magiging soluble daw yung hydroxide if you pair it with sodium, ammonium, group 1, strontium, barium, calcium. Pero ang kapartner niya is magnesium. So, ibig sabihin, hindi siya pasok dun sa soluble exceptions. So, yeah, this is a precipitate. Okay? So, it's insoluble or precipitate. No? Yung precipitate, I usually signify it as PPT. PowerPoint. PPT, ibig sabihin precipitate. Okay? Yan, kasi nakakatamad magsulat eh. So, PPT na lang. Okay? So, that means magnesium hydroxide is a precipitate. And again, ang sinabi ko, kapag precipitate, solid yun. Okay? Solid ang precipitates. Ayun. And so, solid ang precipitate. So, you have to indicate it as letter S. Ayun. Okay, so nakita nyo yung ginawa natin. Yung inyong reactant, convert them into ions. Pag-switchin mo sila ng partners. And then, yung partners na yon, you check for the solubility rule if they will dissolve. Okay? Pag sila ay insoluble, lagyan mo letter S. Ibig sabihin, solid. Because, yeah, you can collect it. Solid yan eh. Pwede mo yan i-filter paper. Okay? So, this is our reaction and we just determined that it can form precipitates. Okay? So, balancing reaction will give you this. However, in my case, I don't care muna about the balancing kasi madali lang naman gawin yon. Okay? So, for now, basta ang gusto ko lang malaman nyo is yung how to determine the precipitates. Okay? So, yun. So, precipitation reactions are usually represented in 3 types of equation. You have the molecular, ionic, and the net ionic equation. Okay? Tatlong uri ng equation yung ginagawa natin dito. By the way, all of them are derived from the molecular equation. So, what is the molecular equation? Ito yon. Okay, ito yung pinakita natin. Wherein the ionic compounds are combined. Ayun. Pag combine yung ionic compounds mo, that's molecular equation. Okay? So, yung magkasama yung cation, anion, and then yung precipitate na kalsulat S with inside the parenthesis. So, what is the ionic equation naman? So, the ionic equation is derived from this one. Derived siya dito. Dito mo makukuha yan. Ano gagawin mo to get the ionic equation? Yung S, pag precipitate yan, wag mo gagalawin. Okay? Ano yung pwede mo gawing ions? Yung AQ. Okay? So, this can be converted into ions. This can be converted into ions. As well as this one. Pero yung solid, hindi mo siya gagalawin. Okay? That will give you the net, the ionic equation. So, itong MgSO4, I can split it as MgSO4. Sodium hydroxide, I can split it as NaOH. Sodium sulfate, I can split it as NaSO4. Pero yung magnesium hydroxide, you should not touch it. Okay? Lagay mo lang siya dun sa dulo. Okay? Again, kapag solid, hindi mo siya gagawing ions. Only those who are in aqueous phase Sila yung gagawin mong ions. Ano ba yung aqueous? Soluble, okay? So, yung mga soluble, din yung aqueous. No? So, lagay mo lang siya doon. Ayan. So, ano pwede mo gawin dito? So, this is your ionic equation. Pwede ka mag-cancel out ng similar ions, okay? So, tignan nyo, ano yung similar ions dito? We have the sodium on the left, we have the sodium on the right. Ano pa yung similar? We have the sulfate here, sulfate there. So, since may similar ions before and after the reaction, you can cancel them out. Okay? Them out, you will get the net ionic equation. Kung ano yung natira, yun yung net ionic equation mo. Okay? The net ionic equation shows the actual ions that reacted. Okay? So, sila yung pinaka ions of interest natin. Sila yung mismong nag-react. Okay? Ang tawag sa kinancel out natin, they are called spectator ions. Sila yung mga marites na ions. Nakatingin lang sila. Ayan, nagja-judge lang sila. Ano kaya ginagawa nila? Ayan. So again, those we canceled out are called spectator ions, and those who remained are called the net ionic equation. Okay? So ganun. So I know this is a new topic for you. So mag-practice tayo. Okay? So I will answer 2 questions here, and then I will leave the rest for you to practice. Siguro 3 questions na. Let's see. Okay. So sabi dito in our exercise, predict if a precipitate will form upon mixing the following substances. Write the molecular equation and the net ionic equation. Let's begin with number 1. Have sodium sulfate and barium chloride. Okay? Sabi niyan, alamin mo daw kung may precipitate if you mix these two. Ado, sige. Let me just open my whiteboard. Nasa stoichiometry na kami. Sana kayo lang. Anyway. Yan yung sa lab. Anyway. So, sige. Ano yun? Sodium sulfate, barium chloride. Sodium sulfate, barium chloride. Number 1. Okay, so alamin mo daw yung products, tapos tignan mo kung may precipitate. So ano yung step natin dito? Ako, gagawin ko per step. Okay? Para mas pasundan nyo. Step 1. Dissociate ions. Okay? So itong reactants mo, convert them into ions. Okay? So yun yung first step. And again, you should know how to get the ions from the formula. Okay? So you just do the reverse crisscross, you will get Na plus SO4 minus 2. Dito naman, crisscross, you have barium 2 plus Cl minus. So yan, ganun lang mag-dissociate. Just remember your crisscross. Okay, crisscross lang yan. So after you dissociate, ano step 2 natin? Step 2, switch pairs. Switch pairs and check for precipitate. Check for precipitate. So switch pair tayo. So sino na yung new pair natin? Sodium pati chloride and barium pati sulfate. Okay? So mag-switch pair tayo. Red and blue naman. Squid Game lang. Nanood ako kagabi bago matulog. Wala lang. Ang ganda, natutuwa ako sa episode 5. Kasi may context yung nangyayari. Anyway. Ano nangyayari dyan? What happened? Ayoko pagsulatin. Okay. So, yung mouse pala. Okay. Grabe naman yung banyo scene. Anyway, so you switch pairs, no? And then you combine them. Okay, you switch the pairs and then you combine them. Hindi, may episode dun na ano, yung babae na ano, yung astig, astig nga siya eh. Totoo ako sa personality niya palaban. Umakyat siya sa vent, tapos tinignan niya yung next game. Yun yung ano, ay hala, spoiler, yun yung Kenty. So anyway, sige. So you switch pairs, then determine their formulas. Okay. So NaCl yan. What is the formula of this one? BaSO4. O yung pagpares yan ng exponent, wag nyo na anuhin. Wag nyo na i-criss-cross. Kasi they will cancel out eventually. Okay? So ito na yung products mo. No? NaCl, barium sulfate. These are your products. Then the question is, may precipitate ba dyan? Okay. So, paano natin malalaman kung may precipitate? Ako alam ko kung sino precipitate dyan kasi ilang araw ko na ito tinuturo. Okay. Pero, turo ko sa inyo paano. Mabalik ulit tayo sa table. Saan ba yan? Ito. So, ano yung products natin? Sabi natin. So, after we do the crisscross na switch partners, products natin ay NaCl and barium sulfate. Okay? So, tignan natin kung precipitate siya dito. NaCl, barium sulfate. Okay? Tingin tayo kung may precipitate na sinabi. Sodium chloride. Precipitate ba yan o hindi? Obviously, hindi yan precipitate. Malamang. Sodium yan eh, di ba? Sabi kasi kanina, pag sodium, soluble yan kahit ano mangyari. Okay? So, kahit ano partner niya, soluble yan. Okay? So, this is not a precipitate. So, X na yan. How about barium sulfate? Basahin ang sinabi. Ito, sulfates. Okay? So, sabi sa sulfate, basa. Most sulfates are soluble except calcium sulfate, strontium sulfate, barium sulfate, lead sulfate, lead 2 sulfate. Okay? Nakita nyo yan, in-emphasize ko. Barium sulfate. Kasi yun yung meron tayo. Sabi niya, soluble siya unless ito yun. Okay? Ito yun, no? Diba? So, ibig sabihin, barium sulfate is indeed insoluble. So, ibig sabihin ito ay precipitate. So, siya yung precipitate. Okay? You just have to read your table, no? And then, logic lang. Ito yun, no? Ayan. So, ibig sabihin, precipitate yan. Okay? Let's go back. We just determined that this one is a precipitate. So, lagyan mo ng letter S. Yung hindi precipitates, lagyan mo ng AQ, pero ako hindi ko na nilalagay kasi konti lang space ko dito. Pero kapag nasa whiteboard ako sa school, nilalagyan ko yan ng AQ, ayan. But in this case, ganito na lang. Okay? So since we determined na may precipitate tayo, we will proceed with step 3. Ano yan? Molecular equation. So, molecular equation, you write your reactant. Pagkatapos ko dito, pwede kayong mag-screenshot. These are your reactants, these are your products. Ayan. Yung products mo ito. Sodium chloride, barium sulfate. And, kapag may precipitate, anong gagawin? Lagyan mo ng letter S. Oops. Yan. So, solid yan. Precipitate yan. So, ibig sabihin may reaction talaga na nangyari. Okay. So, this is unbalanced. So, kayo na bahala mag-balancing yan. Pero unbalanced yan. Okay. So, anyway. So, yan yung molecular equation. Step 4. The net ionic equation. So, net ionic equation. Bakit ko gagawin to? Kasi tinatanong eh. Tinatanong sa problem kanina. So, to get the net ionic equation, all the aqueous species has to be converted into ions. Except for the solid. Okay, yung solid, hindi mo siya gagawing ions. So, I will split this into ions again. So, that will be Na+. So, 4 minus 2. Split this into ions again. Ba+. Cl-. May plus yan in between. Yan. Producing Na+, Cl-, and barium sulfate. Yung barium sulfate, you just copy everything, and then yung S, ayun. isulat mo pa rin yan. Okay, so again, kapag solid, you don't split them into two. Okay, just copy it entirely. So this is your ionic equation, and what we're going to do to get the net ionic equation is to cancel out similar terms. Okay, because again, the similar terms are your spectator ions. Okay, so ano yung spectator ions natin? We have the sodium and the Cl. Okay, so yun yung ating spectator. Ibig sabihin, wala silang ambag, nakatingin lang sila. Okay, so wala silang ginagawa, nakatingin lang. So the remaining ions will be the Ba2 plus, SO4 negative 2, producing the precipitate. This will be our net ionic equation. This one is our ionic equation. Do you always need to write them out? Yes. Depende sa tanong sa question. Okay. Pero ganyan yan. Dali lang, no? Kasi gagawin mo lang, you do the switching ng partners, double displacement yan. And then, after you switch the partners, you determine if you have a precipitate. Okay. So in the case of sodium sulfate, barium sulfate, we were able to determine that barium sulfate is a precipitate. Saan mo nalaman? Dito. Sa paki-print out tong picture na yan. Nasa PowerPoint naman yan. Okay. So yun. Yan yung ating precipitate. Then we write the molecular formula. You balance it, pero kayo na bahala doon. Then, to get the net ionic equation, split the aqueous species into ions, except for the solid. Just copy the solid. Then, once na meron ka na neto, cancel out spectator ions, and what will be left is your ions that really reacted. So, yun yung net ionic equation. It shows the ions that really reacted. Ayun. So, yan yung pagsagot niyan. Okay. So, I know this is new to you, but dinagdagan lang naman natin ng steps yan. Inalam lang naman natin kung sino yung precipitate. So, yan. So, I hope na medyo clear tayo. I hope na clear. Pero you can take a screenshot of this. If you have questions, just send them in the chat box lang. Okay? So, you can take a screenshot before I answer the next question. Mamaya after class, manonood ako ng episode 6. 9 episodes lang pala yun, no? Alam niyo yung sige, habang nagtatake ka ng screenshot, alam niyo yung As the Gods Will. Japanese movie yun. Please watch it. Maganda yun. That was released 2014. That was released in 2014. And that is the basis ata for the Squid Game. Maganda yun. As the Gods Will, mga high school students na Japanese yon. Then they were also forced to participate in games, in exchange for freedom. And yung games na yon, parang Squid Game siya. Doon sila sa isang room, under yung umiikot-ikot na doll. Okay. Andun si Julie's Bake Shop. Yun yung first part ng game. Then the second part of the game, yun. Basta maraming games din doon. So you may want to watch it before the Squid Game. Kasi makita mo yung similarities ng story. Yeah. Battle Royale. Okay. That was released in 2000 ata. Ayun, maganda rin siya na Japanese movie. Okay. Mga Japanese magagaling din sa ganyang type of movie. So yeah. Anyway, so tapos na kayo siguro mag-screenshot. Okay. Ano susunod? This one, next one. Copper nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Okay, so copper nitrate, copper 2 nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Okay, so let me just move it here. Ayan. So nood kayo ng mga movies na yon pag may time na, no? Kasi alam niyo naman, tambak kayo sa canvas. wag magpretend na walang ginagawa. Marami kayong gagawin. Okay. Sa Chem, magko-quiz na naman kayo eh. So, next week pa naman. Ayan. By the way, for those who were unable to take the test, no, possibly due to isolation dahil sa COVID, just let me know so I can reopen it sa inyo, ha? So, yan. So, we have copper 2 nitrate and ammonium sulfate. Ano gagawin natin? Step 1, split the ions. So, dissociate ions. Yan. So, dissociate ions. So, yan. Okay. So, yan yung ating reactants. Split them into ions. So, crisscross, you get Cu2 plus, NO3 minus. Crisscross, you get NH4 and SO4 negative 2. Okay, so those are your ions. Next step. Step 2. Switch partners. Check for precipitate. Check for precipitate. So switch partner. So this one will be paired with that one. This one will be paired to that one. Okay? Criss cross. So, maski sila ika-criss cross mo yan. Okay, so once you have switched the partners, determine the products. Okay, so products na yan agad, no? And then NH4, NO3, crisscross, dot. Okay, so this will be copper 2 sulfate. This will be ammonium. Meow meow daw. Narinig niyo yun. Ayan. May mamakat din kasi sa baba. Nandito yung baby niya. Meow meow, ganun na. Okay, so we have these products, copper 2 sulfate and ammonium sulfate. Tignan natin kung may precipitate dyan. Balik tayo sa PowerPoint. Kasi hindi nyo pa kabisado yan sa ngayon, pero makakabisado nyo rin yan. Kailan ba kabisaduhin? Hindi naman. Pero kapag kabisado nyo kasi, mas mabilis kayo makapagsagot. Ang copper sulfate, ammonium nitrate. Okay, so sulat natin. Oops. Okay, so tignan natin kung may precipitate. Asan yung mouse? Ayun. Okay, so ayan. Copper sulfate, ammonium nitrate. Let's read ammonium muna. Kasi alam ko yung ammonium soluble yan eh, di ba? Look, ammonium soluble, nitrate soluble. So, ibig sabihin, soluble to. Okay? So, this is entirely soluble substance. Okay? And alam nyo ba, let's talk about what happened last year in Beirut. Okay? I know you are familiar with this one. Beirut, Lebanon. Diba? May sumabog doon na storage ng ammonium nitrate. Ammonium nitrates are used as fertilizer. Okay? Hindi ginagamit sila for fertilizers. No? However, this is a good fuel. Okay? This is a good fuel for combustion. And actually, ammonium nitrate, no, it can continue the reaction without any external oxygen. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ilagay mo man yan sa room na walang oxygen, it will continue to burn. Bakit? Saan galing yung oxygen sa tingin nyo? Ayun, no? Di ba sabi ko kanina, when oxygen ions decompose, they produce oxygen. Ibig sabihin, this reaction will be self-sustaining if you burn this, okay? Because the oxygen ion will produce the oxygen that will be needed to combust this molecule, no? Parang sarili na niya mismo yung sinusunog niya, okay? Kasi it has oxygen, it has enough oxygen, no, to burn itself then. Okay? So that's why yun yung nangyari sa Beirut, no? Even though there were attempts by the firefighters, they failed, okay? Because apparently you cannot put this off, no? Mahirap talaga patayin yung ammonium nitrate when it starts burning because it contains the oxygen it needs, no? Tuloy-tuloy yan. Kaya nangyari, ayun na nga, in Beirut, no, morning yun eh, 'di ba? So, nung isang umaga, may electrical failure ata. So, that means, yung spark, Probably it could have ignited the ammonium nitrate, and since as I told you, ammonium nitrate is a self-sustaining combustible product. Kahit dumating man firefighters, bugahan man nila yan ng maraming apoy, since may tonelada na ammonium nitrate doon, wala din. No? And then, their efforts failed, no? And it exploded, no? Kita niyo yung cloud, no? That is actually the air molecules, no? Rushing away from the site, no? Yung cloud na gumanon. Uh, Yun yung mga water molecules, air molecules that are actually hit by the sound waves of the explosion. Okay? So yun lang yung gusto ko sabihin na that ammonium nitrates are self-sustaining combustible products. Ibig sabihin nun, ano sila, pag nasunog sila, kaya na nila i-sustain sarili nila as long as mainit. Okay? And medyo mahirap patayin yan pag nag-start yan masunog. Okay? So, ano yung mali, no? Ang mali doon is that bakit ka maglalagay ng super daming ammonium nitrate sa isang storage, no? Because this is a fire hazard, no? In chemistry, we learn also the hazard classifications, no? So, if you are an environmental chemist, ayun, or pollution control chemist, ayun. So, dapat alam mo na hindi pwede yan. Okay? Bawal ganun. So, yun lang. That's very sad day, no? And then, eventually, during COVID ba yun? I think COVID yun. No? So, during COVID yan. So, yeah. Very sad for the Lebanese people, no, to be affected by this explosion and the COVID-19 pandemic. No? And the unstable government and so yeah, yan, so let's pray for them na lang. Okay, so bali yan, so that is the ammonium nitrate, and as you can see, they are both soluble. Okay, so ginagamit to as fertilizer then, okay, because ammonium is needed for the production of nitrogenous plants, no, yung mga beans, no, mga legumes, ayan, so ginagamit nila yung nitrogens yan. How about copper sulfate? Okay, so copper sulfate, tingin tayo, sulfate soluble. Sabi, most sulfates are soluble except calcium, strontium, barium, lead 2. Okay, so wala naman si copper sulfate sa sinabing except. So that means it is soluble. Okay, so we have a soluble ammonium nitrate, soluble copper sulfate. So may precipitate? Wala. Okay, so we have no precipitates. No? Wala tayong precipitates. Anong gagawin ko, sir, pag ganun na? Pag walang precipitate, ganito isusulat mo. Copy your reactants. Okay, so these are your reactants. Ang susulat mo sa right side, no reaction. Okay, no reaction. Hindi mo isusulat to. Pwede mo rin isulat, pero mali yan. So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, di ba? Sabi ko in the earlier slides, no, that not all aqueous species, no, when you combine them, they form products. Hindi lahat, okay? Iilan lang yung may products na nabubuo, such as those who can form precipitates, okay? So in our case, ang nakagawa ng precipitate, ito, barium sulfate. So if you have a solid precipitate here, you can continue with step 3 and 4. Pero, if you don't form any precipitate, stop ka na dyan. Pag nakita mo, wala na akong precipitate na mabuo, stop na yan. Bakit? No reaction na yan eh. Okay? Kasi remember, kung lahat yan aqueous, what do you think will happen to the net ionic equation? What do you think will happen? Lahat sila magka-cancel out. Kasi lahat sila aqueous. Lahat sila magka-cancel out. Therefore, there's no reaction that took place talaga. Okay? So, wala talagang reaction na nangyari. Okay? So, again, this is for cases wherein you have two aqueous species, no? Soluble species. Okay? Pag wala ka nakitang precipitate, stop ka na dyan. Okay? Kasi walang reaction yan. Pag tinanong net ionic equation yan, sabihin mo, no net ionic equation because all the reactants and products are soluble. Walang mangyayari. Okay? So sa toyo and suka, no? Ganito din nangyayari. Sa suka, you have a hydronium ion and then your acetate ion. Okay? And then for the toyo, ano ba yung mga nandun? Glutamate, no? Mga, basta yun, mga other molecules na wala naman silang na-form na precipitate, no? So that's why when you mix your suka and toyo, walang namumuo, no? However, if you mix some chemicals, they form precipitates. Okay? So let me just emphasize on one one thing sa paligid natin, yung sa Ilog Pasig, no? So ako bilang PUP nung college, no? Um, sa gilid lang namin Ilog Pasig. Kaya kapag kami may research, mostly Ilog Pasig yung ginagawa namin. So sakay kami ferry, kukuha kami ng tubig sa Ilog Pasig, then we analyze it. Okay? Then actually masaya din sa makay ng ferry kung hindi nyo pa natatry. Ganun kayo sa harap ng Parakayan, si Jack pati si ano Rose sa Titanic, pero mabaho nga lang yung paligid. Okay, so anyway, yan, nagfe-ferry kami to Ilog Pasig, and then we collect water samples at different stations, no? Usually baba namin is Guadalupe. Okay, and then pagdating doon, mag-mega mall kami. Kasama yung mga maruruming tubig. Hindi, joke. Doon kami sa kaklase namin. So bali yan. So when we analyze uh, our samples of Pasig Water River, nagtaka kami, no? Kasi bakit siya kulay itim? Okay. So, ang sabi ng prof namin is this one. The reason why yung ating Pasig River is maitim, other than the waste, no, that people, people discard onto it, no? Yung mga, nasa kanal-kanal natin, doon yung natatapon. Even the sewage, no, ng tao, doon din napupunta. Okay, kasi wala tayong proper waste management in the Luzon, in the Metro Manila. So, ang isang reason bakit siya kulay itim daw is this one, because of the lead sulfide. Okay? So, lead sulfide, okay, so tingin tayo dito. And so, lead sulfide, and so, sulfides are insoluble except this. No? So, that means lead sulfide is insoluble. Ang kulay nun ay itim. Okay? So, and yung amoy niya, amoy Ilog Pasig din. Okay? So, yun. That is a proof that our Pasig River is really condemned over time. No? Wala na siyang pag-asa siguro. Pero wag tayo mawalan ng it doesn't mean na wala tayong gagawin for the Pasig River. No? Kasi, imagine nyo, it was once living, no? Maraming species na nabubuhay doon, no? Nung panahon ni Rizal, nakikita niya yung Ilog Pasig, 'di ba? Alam ko may kasama yun sa kanyang mga ginawang nobela, 'di ba? So, ayun, so sana, although it is virtually dead for now, hopefully we can do some things, no, in the future para mabuhay ulit siya. Ang reason kasi bakit may lead sulfide doon is that ito. Do you remember the Paco Oil Company? Okay, yun sa Paco Pandacan, sorry. Pandacan Oil Company. Okay. So tapat 'yun ng PUP. So yung mga oil companies doon sila nagtatambak ng gasolina. Okay. And according to our interview with the people there, ito yung sabi nila, there was a time na nagkaroon ng spill ng gasolina doon. Spill, onti lang daw, pero I doubt na onti lang yun kasi ang dami. Dami naming na-detect na lead eh. Okay. So, bale yun yung kwento nila, no, na may nagkaroon daw ng leak doon, pero I think that was not reported to the authorities. No? Dati pa naman daw. Okay. And then, nag-match yun sa result namin because we detected so many lead. Okay. Apparently kasi yung gasolina, sometimes they contain lead. May lead metals sila. So yun, nag-match yung mga stories and our analysis. No? Mataas yung lead, and then that is also the reason bakit ganun yung kulay ng Ilog Pasig, kulay itim. Other than the waste products people discard to the river, formation din yun ng lead sulfide, kaya super itim niya. Okay, ayun. And mabaho din. Okay? Because sulfides are mabaho. Okay? Saan galing yung sulfide, if you may ask? So, galing yan sa mga decomposing objects, no? Especially yung mga waste natin, and then yung mga animals there, no? Yung mga janitor fish, mga plants na nade-degrade, no, from the amino acids nila, doon galing yung mga sulfide ions. Okay, so yun. So medyo sad that Pasig River is virtually dead for now, but I hope that yung dead nga nare-revive eh. So Pasig River pa kaya na, kasi dati maganda yun eh. Ayun lang, as biologists kayo, I hope na you will also look into the biological systems that could thrive doon, no, in the future. Maybe pwede nyo gawing research yun. Okay, kami naman as chemists, we continue our analysis of the river, no? So we determine the microplastics, no? Determine the concentration of heavy metals, no? Kaya nga bawal kang maligo doon kasi maraming heavy metals, probably due to the oil spills before from the oil companies, no? So yeah, very sad, pero that's the reality of life here in Metro Manila. Kaya, ay naka, we need to have good people talaga in our government seats para maging mabuhay na uli yung Pasig. Okay? So anyway, so let's proceed with the last part. Hindi ko nasagutan yung isa. Itong 3, 4, 5. Kayo na bahala. Kasi yung answer niya nasa PowerPoint na. Let me show you how will you access it. So if you download the PowerPoint, go kayo dun sa slide na yon. Ito ba yan? Let's go to this slide. Nakikita niyo sa baba, may nakasulat. Answers. Ayan. Okay. So, andyan yung ionic equation, molecular equation, the net ionic equation. Okay. So, yan. And, binalance ko na yan. So, yeah. So, download nyo na lang. Makikita nyo yan sa ilalim. Okay. Same as this one and for the other questions here. Okay. Sige. So, tapusin na natin yung acid-base. Kasi similar lang to sa kanina. So, acid-base reaction, this is the reaction of acid and bases. Ayan, tapos na. Ano pa meron sa acid? In our discussion on the nomenclature, acids have hydronium ions as the cation, and bases have hydroxides as the anion. Okay? What happens when you combine the hydronium ion and the hydroxide ion? Bale, they form water. Kaya nga sinabi itong neutralization reaction because water is neutral. Ito sa pH of around 7 at its pure state. Okay? So, siya ay nasa middle ground. Kaya neutralization. Okay? Nasa gitna siya ng acidity and basicity scale. Okay? So, H plus from the acid, OH from the base. So, ibig sabihin, neutralization reaction is characterized by this equation. Acid plus base equal water and salt. Okay, yung salt na yan, yun yung natirang cation and ion. Okay? Then yung water, take note, it is written in the L, state of matter, liquid yan. Hindi yan aqueous kasi, ano uli pag sinabi kong aqueous? Yung molecule nakahalo sa tubig. Hindi mo pwede ihalo yung tubig sa tubig kasi tubig din yan. Magsasama lang sila. Okay? So, that's liquid. Okay? So, hindi siya aqueous. Okay? So, yan. So, again, yung salt, yun yung mga anion ng acid and cation ng base. Sila yung magsasama. Okay? So, for example, we have sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid. So, again, the first step is to separate the ions. Once you have the ions separated, you swap the partners. Okay, so H plus, kukunin niya yung OH ni kabila. Na plus, kukunin niya yung Cl ng kabila. So swap partners. So again, this is double displacement. Then you will produce this product. Okay. So again, water is liquid, so you write letter N. Ito, tanungin ko kayo. Ano yung net ionic equation nito? Okay. So sabi ko, for the net ionic equation, only aqueous species should be cancelled out. Okay. So if I write them again into the total ionic equation, so this will be H plus, Cl minus, Na plus, OH minus. Yung water, hindi ko in-split kasi hindi yun aqueous, di ba? So you write H2O, and the NaCl will be written as Na plus, Cl minus, kasi aqueous yun. So you can see, you can cancel out this, and ang matitira ay H plus, OH minus, H2O. So this is the net ionic equation of acid-base reaction. And yan parati yung net ionic equation. Okay? Yan always. Okay? So H plus OH minus producing H2O. So bali, kung makakita kayo sa quiz, no, you have your acid and base pinagsama, tinanong net ionic equation. Hanapin nyo agad to. Kasi this is the answer. Ito lang, wala nang iba. Okay? This is the only answer. Okay? So yan. Also, I just have to remind everyone that sometimes our salts could be precipitates then. Okay? Pwedeng precipitate yung salts mo. Okay? Kasi you can just refer to the solubility table naman. Okay? So let's try this. Predict the product and determine if there will be precipitates. Okay? So again, our salts could be precipitates now, pero it's not necessary naman na maging precipitates sila. Okay? Mahalaga may water ka na na-form. Okay? So I will answer 2 items again. This and this. Okay. Then kayo na bahala sa iba kasi nasa PowerPoint na yung sagot. Okay? So copper 3 hydroxide plus phosphoric acid. Dito na lang, ano yung mga ions na kaya natin magawa? The ions are CO3 plus, OH minus, H plus, PO4 minus 3. Then you swap partners. Ito, bali ion. Determine the formula. H2O liquid plus copper 3 phosphate. Okay? So, ganun lang. That's the double displacement reaction. Again, it is important for you to know the correct formula, okay? And the ion charge. So, yan. That is our answer. Question, may precipitate ba? So, hindi naman to focus ng topic natin, pero tignan natin kung may precipitate. Because sometimes meron eh. So, tingin ulit tayo sa table. Of course, yung water, di yan precipitate, no? Yung salt yung pwede maging precipitate. Tingnan natin copper phosphate. Copper phosphate. Tingnan natin. Ito, phosphate. Ano sinabi sa phosphates? They are insoluble. Ibig sabihin, precipitate sila. Unless you pair them with ammonium and group 1. Kanina ba naka-pair yung phosphate natin kay copper? Ammonium ba yun? Hindi. Group 1 ba yun? Hindi. Ibig sabihin, it is insoluble. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, when you combine copper 3 and phosphates, yun, mamumuo siya. Okay? Bukod sa tubig. Okay? So, this will be a solid precipitate then. Okay? So, liquid to, solid yan. So, bali, dalawa net ionic equation mo. One net ionic equation is for the water, H plus OH minus producing H2O. And the other ionic equation is yung copper and yung phosphate producing the solid precipitate. Okay? It also means wala kang spectator ions. Okay? Kasi lahat sila nag-produce ng products that are not aqueous species. Okay? So, liquid and solid kasi na form. So, wala kang spectator ions. Okay? So, again, let me just reiterate, no? Yung precipitate, hindi yan necessary, no, ma-form. Okay? It may form, it may not form. As long as you have water, you're fine. Okay? As long as you have your water in your product, that's okay. Okay? So, next one, I will answer this one. Then, kayo na bahala sa tatlo, ha? So, what are the ions here? So, the ions are Al3 plus, OH minus. For this one, oopsie, you have your H plus, NO3 minus. Switch partners. Yan. So, you have your H2O and your aluminum nitrate. Okay? So, kailangan nag-iisip sa crisscross. Isip na lang. Wag nyo na i-manual crisscross. Okay. So, aluminum nitrate, is it soluble or not? No. So, again, sabi sa solubility rules, nitrates are soluble. Okay. So, ibig sabihin, it should be written in the aqueous phase. Okay. So, yan. So, that's the lesson for today. Okay, for next meeting, we will cover this one, oxidation reduction reaction. Medyo maraming i-discuss dito kaya kapit lang muna kayo. Hindi to tinuturo sa non-STEM kaya I will try my best no to really effectively share the knowledge dito. Okay? For STEM students, may advantage kayo kasi tinuturo to sa atin. But for others, hindi to tinuturo. Okay. So, I will do my best to teach you this lesson because this will be very important, especially in your future chemistry subjects. Okay. Such as, ang tawag doon? Analytical chemistry. Okay, so next meeting na to. But for now, we are done with our goal topics na. So, alam na natin yung general types of chemical reaction, very high school. Then, we discuss three other specific types of chemical reaction for combustion. Ito yon. We have your fuel, oxygen, producing CO2 and water. Pero sometimes the reaction is incomplete. That's why it produces other products such as carbon, soot, and carbon monoxide. Okay? So I emphasize on the biological importance of the biological significance no ng carbon monoxide. That's why we have smoke detectors. Okay? Because it can compete with oxygen. And yung carbon soot, ayun, yun yung itim-itim sa ating lutuan and sa tambucho. Okay? So kapag gano'n niya yung sasakyan nyo, palitan nyo na. Bili na kayo ng bago. Okay? So yan. And then for reactions in aqueous solution, the idea here is that yung ionic compounds nyo, they split into ions. And when they split into ions, they swap out partners. Nagsaswap sila ng partners. Okay? So, by swapping their partners, there could be chances that they may form products. Pwede rin hindi. Okay? So, how will you know if there will be products? So, ito yon, A and B. Okay? Ito yung na-discuss natin. If you form precipitates, may product. Kapag wala ka na form na precipitate, walang product. If you form water, may product ka na form. Kung wala, edi wala. Ayan, so for precipitation, ang very important thing lang dito is to remember this table. I will not force you to remember this na ano lang, just be familiar na lang. Pero ako, I highly suggest na medyo kabisaduhin siya para mas mabilis magsagot sa quiz, sa midterms, ayun. Okay? Mas mabilis kasi. Hindi ka na kailangan tumingin dito parate. Okay? And then, for precipitation reactions, we can write the equation in three ways. The molecular equation, the ionic equation, where everything is converted into ions except for the precipitate, and the net ionic equation, wherein the spectator ions are cancelled out. Okay? Ayun. And again, just to reiterate, pag wala kang precipitate na na-form, ano yung sasagot nyo? No reaction. Okay? Walang reaction na nangyari. Acid-base reaction, that's just the reaction between acids, H plus, and bases, OH minus. Okay? And those ions produce water. Okay? And salt. And sometimes yung salt natin, they could be precipitates as well. Okay? So that ends our lesson for today. No? So I hope na you learned something. And is this the first time you learned this lesson? First time nyo lang ba